Hello, and for those of you joining, welcome to the Well, thank you to Ian Goldstein and Beth and Jaidev for kicking off the Americas stream of the GCV Digital Forum to continue illuminating the most pressing issues facing the corporate, strategic, and traditional venture capital community. It is my distinct and wonderfully great pleasure to welcome both Andrea Hoffman, who is founder and CEO of Culture Shift Labs, and what a treat we have by also having Darren Dobson, Managing Director of Lumen Capital, to join us today. They're going to be sharing some key areas of data that are representative of where we're going as an industry as it relates to D&I. And with such unprecedented change in our world right now, thank you both for being here. I mean, what a wonderful opportunity to have you both share some of your privileged findings and as pioneers and as trailblazers around D&I. Thank you for being here today. So I don't want to take up too much time because we are a little off schedule, so I'll just have you jump right into it. And Andrea, Darren, thank you very much for being here and welcome.
Thank you and good morning. I tried to keep it pretty bright here, so hopefully my yellow and multicolored background and dress is waking everybody up. So good morning and thank you for having us. I'm going to read a statement. I'm going to pass it on to Darren to read a statement. And then what we want to do is make this very interactive. Our goal is to ensure that this is not just about education, inspiration, and networking. This is about action. This is about outcomes. What information can Darren and I share with you that will allow you to go back to your organizations or influence circles that you're a part of so that people are actually moving the needle forward on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the venture space? So in 2020, we all know, well, we're living 2020, and it is an excruciatingly painful year, to say the least. In the US, corporations have realized that they can no longer take their consumers, their employees, and their stakeholders for granted. This is particularly true for Black people and also for Latinos and women. For many of these corporations, this means confronting the fact that their businesses have been built upon the labor and consumer behavior directly tied to these same communities, and yet the corporation support of them has been sorely lacking in venture. Despite playing a significant role in the overall economy, these groups, African Americans and Hispanic Americans, collectively represent nearly $3 trillion in annual buying power, and women drive 70 to 80% of all consumer purchasing through a combination of their buying power and influence. The venture capital industry has not yet recognized and embraced these individuals as investors or capital allocators. Inclusive innovation powers healthier economies. I think we can all agree to that. GCV and Silicon Valley Bank released research last year regarding the role that corporate VCs can play in bringing a greater level of diversity to the industry. The good news is that there are corporations starting to take that advice. Industry leaders such as Google, PayPal, and Cisco have all made public commitments to change their traditional ways and are taking LP positions in venture funds led by Black fund managers. They also recognize the fact that these managers maintain different networks and founder access that can lead to differentiated deal flow, new innovations, and ultimately being investment outcomes. What they're also beginning to realize is that there are certainly an opportunity to generate positive returns from investing in diversity. They're also realizing that there's a real cost to not investing in diversity and inclusion. And when I pass the mic to Darren, he will give you even more context on this. In this moment in time, what corporations choose to do is being watched very closely, and what they choose not to do is also being watched closely. The winners will be the ones that seize the opportunity and move to capitalize on it rather than shrink from the moment. One of my colleagues, William Crowder, who's probably in the audience, is a pioneer in corporate investment in this industry, and he hopefully will ask a question that will lead to even more insight. With that, it is my distinct honor to introduce a friend of mine who has probably the best research on the planet to give further context to this conversation. And with that, I'll pass it on to Darren Dotson.
Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you, Andrea, and the incredible work of Culture Shift. I'll share a little bit of context and then some specific research. So I'm Darren Dotson, and I'll speak from three different roles today. One as the Managing Director of Illumin Capital, a private equity investment fund of funds in the growth, venture, and private equity space, focused on executing with the funds that we invest into a 10-year implicit bias reduction strategy. Number two, I'm a board member at Ben & Jerry's, where I've served on the board for 8 years. And number three, I'm also a board member at the Stanford Business School, which for the first year ever released a diversity report on our overall progress. As I think about the research that I co-authored with a professor at Stanford, Dr. Jennifer Eberhardt, and also Dr. Ashby Monk, PhD and doctorate from Oxford, and looking at sovereign wealth fund and pension fund portfolio construction pools, we systematically tested 180 asset allocators managing over $1 trillion in capital for A/B testing, controlling for 11 variables, and found that systematically, when you increase the performance of black-led funds, when A/B tested against white-led funds, at the highest end of performance, there's the most bias. In other words, it's as if the investor's mind shuts down on its analytical profit-seeking and optimization goal in order to leave money on the table systematically when black-led funds are outperforming. So that's a critical and substantial finding within our research. We also found that as we dug deeper into the problem, that these biases, as Daniel Kahneman and Richard Thaler and others have proven, are addressable. And that is the work that Illumin Capital is dedicated to, systematically reducing implicit biases that prevent and block women and people of color from advancing in systems. We find that this research sits within a chasm of research presented by a number of other folks over the last 40 years that shows that there is outperformance on a relative basis, or at least equal performance of black-led funds. And when we look at the comparison of Black-led, Latino-led funds and relative to their white counterparts and peers, emerging manager programs for the last 30 to 40 years have been allocating capital, seeing outperformance, but yet the needle has not moved. And indeed, today we stand at 1.3% of $69 trillion in capital that is allocated to women and people of color-led funds. And that's about 35 trillion below what we'd expect by random chance. So we have a lot of work to do. Of course, corporations and their balance sheets make up a huge portion. We've seen commitments from upstream asset owners that want to make a dent in this problem, that own the positions and substantial positions within respective corporations. So I think we're ripe in a period of opportunity and change, and a window of opportunity to push forward, maximizing profit and making a difference on this important issue at every level of the corporation.
Yeah. Thank you, Darren. Really, really critical insight and research that if you want, whoever's listening that represents corporate venture funds or influencers or consultants to that, you can change this. You can go to Darren's website to get the research, illumincapital.com, Darren?
That's right. ILLUMEN, illumincapital.com.
And also, just I want to make another sort of share a piece of insight that people can action on. So my firm, Culture Shift Labs, has put together the nation's largest gathering of Black and Latinx venture capitalists. We have a list of 300. So companies that say, and this is a normal statement, so you would be running average if you said we can't find any. Where are they? There are funds that are not big enough for us. That is not true. So I just want to level set there that it is true. You can access it. And the reason that I'm pointing that out right now is not to be self-promotional. It is to help you and let you know that you too can access this universe tomorrow, right? So with that, we don't have a lot more time left. What I'd like to do is open it up to questions so you can walk away with something tangible that's helpful to you as you try and move the needle forward. And we will wait to get some questions in the chat from the audience. From the production team, do we have any questions so far? Okay, so Darren, do you have any examples of success stories that you can share?
Yeah, even 2 years into our process, we've worked with a number of funds to increase the directionality of their board construction processes, so that there are more Black and Latinx folks represented on boards. We've looked at their investment processes that have resulted in reducing biases and increasing the diversity within the portfolio. And we've also partnered with our funds to look at their hiring, retention, promotion, and attraction processes and work with them to increase all of the underrepresented people of color at each of the phases in those respective processes. I think I'd note that, as many of us know, there's an MIT study that shows that the names Jack versus Jamal or Jack versus Emily result in 30% fewer callbacks for the exact same resume for Emily and 50% fewer callbacks for Jamal. So what we find is that when we apply that same principle to the process in which most people in this community are working on, which is the venture process, we found systematic capital left on the table due to our implicit biases that cause us to overlook and underestimate the pipeline of entrepreneurs. And let me pause just for a moment to say that although many will say that the pipeline is the problem, what we do as a firm is we work with our investors to help them examine their own biases. Because what we find is that the biases are actually not on the pipeline side alone. They're actually more prominent within the investment selection process and the inability to see the talent that's already there and present.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that organizations can do. And one of the things that we see trending, two things actually. One is if you don't have external partnerships with experts and you're not bringing them in to look at your processes, Darren, like you do, and you say we can do this internally, what you're doing is you're setting your team up to fail. It would be the equivalent of having a baseball team and putting a first baseman as a catcher or the pitcher. So you have to have the right team on the playing field to win, right? And so find the experts that have the knowledge and network, and have opportunities to access different networks, right? So we had a conversation the other day with an organization that said, hey, we're investing in Black venture capitalists. It was a corporate venture fund. And we have 40 Black venture capitalists, and I think we're good. We're doing really good. And so my question to them was, well, of the Black venture capitalists, we have 150 in the database. So do you really think the 40 is allowing you to do the kind of due diligence that gets you the right partners, the right funds to invest in? So I would say, experts allow you to think differently, give you a competitive advantage, and access venture funds that you wouldn't otherwise know of. Because the truth is, not everybody is doing press. Not everybody is a household name, right? And so, I would challenge everybody to do the due diligence. We have a question from Jim. Have we found? Go ahead, Darren.
Well, go ahead, Andrea. You can read it off.
I think the question is, have you found it useful to link up with the growing impact and SDG movement? Absolutely. The partnerships now, the silver lining in COVID and shelter in place and many other tragic factors are forcing, I call it forced innovation. And within that, there's a lot of collaboration that wouldn't otherwise have been achieved otherwise. So the answer to that is absolutely. And also just ESG. The S in ESG is something that is part of the work that we do. There's another question.
I'll jump in on that one too.
Yeah,
on the ESG one. So my background is I spent 8 years leading the private equity portfolio of 44 funds on 5 continents at the Calvert Funds previously, before starting Illumin Capital, and had a powerful experience in impact investing, which we now apply within the Illumin Capital framework. And I think one of the big challenges that we have as a community of ESG and SDG focused corporations is that many of these metrics were designed with Black people and women out of them. So we have to decolonize the metrics. Indeed, that's an exercise that we work on. I chair the audit committee for social audit reporting in 35 countries around the world at Ben & Jerry's as a part of our independent board of directors. And that is an important exercise, making sure that we have metrics that not only embody, as Andrea said, the environmental and other aspects of what we're looking at, but we also blast within the vernacular of those metrics women and people of color who has historically been left out. Indeed, the S. And that's really important for another reason, is that in there lies the strategy for the outperformance relative to impact and ESG metrics. So the better that we can nail that problem and make sure that we have not only competitive representation at every level of the corporation, we're better positioned to win in markets and have key insights that lead to dominant positions within the marketplace.
Yeah. So I think we have about 30 seconds left. Darren, thank you for that. I'm going to just give 2 calls to action. One is visit Culture Shifting Weekends with an S. Click on the New York tab so that you can understand what we're doing in the largest gathering of Black and Latinx venture capitalists. You will be enlightened. And last question before we wrap up. Aperture VC, William Crowder, is in the audience here, who I mentioned earlier. He's building a coalition of corporate LPs to address this diversity issue. And he asked if we're seeing any verticals lean in more than others. Not really, William. We're seeing that, from banking to tech and fintech, that people are just leaning in, and we're really trying to understand systemic change. That is the goal. That is the aim. There is opportunity. You too tomorrow could fix something within your company. Please reach out to Darren and I. We want to be helpful. We want to help you move the needle, not just as consultants, but access to opportunity.
All right. Well, and take care, everyone. It's been wonderful to be here with you.
Thank you.